To learn more about the preparations in the lead up to Sunday's parliamentary elections in Venezuela, we now welcome Cristopher Matlhako, Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, who's in Venezuela to observe the election process. What can you tell us about your arrival in Venezuela and what you've seen so far?
Well, I think it's important for us to note the fact that these elections are important not only for Venezuela, but for the evolving democratization of progressive states like Venezuela. So you will know that Venezuela has had the most number of elections any country in the world has had. And that is important also with the background of the United States recent elections and typical of one Donald Trump not wanting to leave office there. So these elections are important and taking place in that context. And what we have seen here is a very calm situation where when you go around the streets, you see people are very enthusiastic, and when you tell them that you're coming to observe the elections, and they make the point that these elections are important for them.
Chris, how important do you think the role of international delegations who are accompanying the electoral process in Venezuela is?
This process is very important. It's important for a number of reasons. One such reason is that here in Latin America, there's a group of countries that have set themselves on the outside of progressive states that are developing on the continent. So they have, for all intents and purposes, positioned themselves as an opposition to whatever Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba does. And they will want to propagate their ideas of undemocratic elections in Venezuela. And that's where the role of international observers comes in. The role of international observers is to give weight to the efficacy of the elections, the planning thereof, the counting, and the many important processes that these elections are actually taking place. And we were informed in some informal discussions that there are new elements that Venezuela is adding. The Venezuela Electoral Commission is adding to these elections. But we are also trying to learn important lessons for ourselves so that we continue to develop our electoral system to give it meaning and to make it meaningful for the people who participate in these elections.
Chris, what do you think we can expect from Sunday's elections and the coming months in Venezuela?
I think these elections are about defending the right of the Venezuelan people to decide the trajectory that they want to take. Despite interventions of the United States, despite military interventions, despite an illegal sanctions and blockade, the people of Venezuela have stood behind a project of the Bolivarian Revolution. And we think the Bolivarian Revolution is important. Venezuela is an important exemplar for the world. We know that there are other countries, there are other superpowers, and importantly, imperialism is seeking to place its hands on the mineral wealth of Venezuela, its oil, and many other things. And therefore, it is important to defend that, because that is a resource of the people of Venezuela, and it must be used for the purposes of addressing the national aspirations and the entire people of Venezuela as a whole.